Earth has better weather.
Let's take a look at our winter weather update. And nationwide this morning, we had some cold air located over the northern plains, 4 degrees at International Falls. And over northern Maine, we had readings below zero, 22 at Burlington. Working your way to the south, as far south as the central Appalachians, lows in the upper 30s. We had 62 in Atlanta, 67 at Tampa, and then working west, a little pocket of cooler air dipping south behind the front, 37 at Oklahoma City, but 52 in Dallas. And then we go to the west, 49 the low at Las Vegas, and a pair of 42s, Seattle and Portland, Oregon. Current temperature readings, 25 at Caribou, 51 down at New York City. Now we have a low that's worked its way off the coast. There's yet another low pressure that will slide across the southern lakes tonight and then head off the southern New England coast. So we've had a couple of these now skirting by. The last one brought some pretty decent snow, especially for this particular winter season. It doesn't take much snowfall to be a good storm this season. And we did manage to squeeze out anywhere from 2 to almost 5.5 inches of snow across parts of southern New England. And you can see we still have snow at this hour across north central and northeastern Maine. Same front. Now we followed all the way down to the south. This front becomes a major troublemaker for Texas. So the reason we say that is because the front is just one of several ingredients that will come together to provide widespread rain, and in some cases, unfortunately, way too much rain. We yesterday picked up anywhere from 6 to reports as much as 8 inches of rain in parts of Mason and Kimball counties in southern Texas. And what we think will happen is that front is pretty much going to hang out over southern Texas probably into Wednesday. Not tomorrow, but into Wednesday. As that's happening, moisture continues to stream in from the Gulf at low levels. In the mid and upper layers of the atmosphere, additional moisture will come in from the southwest. There's actually a fairly large upper low sitting over northernmost Mexico at this hour, and it's acting as a pretty effective pumping mechanism to keep sending that moisture up across Texas in the mid and upper levels. Temperature-wise, look at Atlanta and Birmingham, 74, 56 at Nashville. And you can see as the front cuts through, brings some cooling, not terribly cold, 64 at Oak City, 62 at Dallas. Then we get into the 70s and even some 80s over southernmost Texas. As you go north of the front, it's still quite mild. Grand Island and Goodland, both in the low 70s, 40s for Minneapolis, and then 30s at International Falls. We have our surface warm front scooting across southern Minnesota. This front will slide farther south later tonight, and then we'll get back into somewhat more of a cool dome of Canadian air. And out ahead of the low and the warm front, this area of snow will slide across the lakes as we go through this afternoon and tonight. The west is quiet, at least as we start out here near the Four Corners, go west to the coast to California. Then we go north and we run into a fairly persistent band of rain and snow that's been cutting across northern Oregon and extreme southern Washington during the last 12 hours. Still got a winter storm warning in effect for the northeast mountains of Oregon, the Blues and the Wallowas. Could see an additional 3 to 7 inches of snow throughout the rest of the day. But check out how warm it is in Boise, 60 degrees, 63 degrees as we head south to Salt Lake City. There's the rain shield and the snow shield coming in across northern Oregon and southern Washington. And this area of precipitation has pretty much been focused right in this corridor during the last 12 hours or so. And it looks like it'll pretty much stay there, at least as we head through the rest of the afternoon. And then we'll have to see if indeed tonight there's a shifting north of that precipitation area. This is the way it looks like on the satellite view, and you can see the cloud elements go off the Pacific coast here and then work their way all the way back into central Idaho. Snow in the mountains. Likewise, we do have some snow reported in western Montana. Now, from the water vapor perspective, you can see that this batch of moisture stretches down here to the south. The major storm, the main storm center, spinning around there, the moisture field circulating around. That's the area of low pressure, which, by the way, you can see the tendency is to watch it drop towards the southeast. So it looks like we're set up for some very unsettled weather over the Pacific Northwest as we head through the next 24 to 36 hours. Here's the forecast. The front drops into northern Florida, not the tail end. It still hangs out in South Texas, providing just one ingredient for the heavy rain, which we feel will be coming back into the area tonight and into Tuesday, even Wednesday. More heavy rain is possible. Low pressure, western New York tomorrow, off the southern New England coast by tomorrow afternoon. And over the west coast, more mountain snow, more rain showers, and perhaps some rain and snow as far south as northwestern California. We'll take a look at your driver's report next. Valiant signs of winter are still evident across much of the northern U.S. Good afternoon. I'm Declan Kennan. I'm learning how to talk.
And I'm Mike Bono. We're learning how to shovel snow again in New England. Got a taste of winter again this morning, but the result of a fast-moving storm system currently is moving off the coast and on out to sea. Let's see what it left behind in Boston, Massachusetts. The streets and trees of Metro Boston had a white coating this morning. Not enough to shut down the city or most schools, but any sign of winter does tend to slow down a morning commute. Take a look at this. Wow, this guy must have been late for work, running with his shovel through the sidewalks of Boston. Now, the low pressure responsible for all of this is moving on out to sea, but its calling card is left behind. It's March now. You have to realize that a lot of the Northeast will melt off a snowfall in the morning by afternoon. It's already up to 50 degrees in New York. You had less than an inch in most of the 5 boroughs, but up to 2 inches in some of the surrounding suburbs. But the moisture and the dynamics, the lift from this storm, still giving you some snow in some of northern and eastern Maine. A little bit of a plume of rain or snow mixed. We're not sure. We don't have any direct reports coming off Lake Ontario, so almost a bit of a lake effect getting into the act there. You can see it just setting up here around Oswego County. And whether it's cold enough to give you any accumulations of snow is very questionable. Aroostook County, Piscataquis County, northern Penobscot still hitting on a little bit of snow around Millinocket and on toward Jonesport, Machias, Eastport, on up the river into parts of Aroostook County. Still snowing just a little bit. But in Vermont, we had up to 8 inches of snow, and I think it was Windham County, south central Vermont. An isolated report, mostly 4 to 6 from there into the capital district of Albany. But I'll tell you what, when you see the temperatures, you'll see that it's melted in New York with 51 degrees, and Boston melting very fast. If you like that wet snow on the trees, Courier and I have seen in the morning, it's gone right now in Boston. Even Albany with several inches of snow, 45, 50 in Pittsburgh. So the warming trend goes on. We've got a southwesterly wind, though, in places like Indy and Toledo and Cleveland. Some wet snow moving on through Flint and Saginaw and on to Marquette, Duluth, the Arrowhead of Minnesota, a Clipper-type low that is just beginning to get the act together, and there will be more action from that, so stay tuned. Some of that snow coming through Duluth and on into the area around Rhinelander, Wisconsin, and the Fox Valley, and Park Falls, and moving on toward Traverse City and Pellston, which has had a big winter so far. More snow to come, including northern parts of New England, mostly Maine. A more or less stationary front, and thunderstorms have been popping up in a popcorn, scattered fashion from about the Atlanta metro down to Columbus, on toward Birmingham, but more Montgomery. Baton Rouge, not quite New Orleans, and down toward the coastline. Houston has been spared, but Declan will get to what's been happening in South Texas in just a minute. As our jet stream is busy, high jet stream clouds up over North Carolina, Tennessee, and the moisture still regrouping, even into Alabama. Our warm temperatures, 70s into Raleigh, 80s into Tampa, Miami. New York warming up rapidly as we were showing you, and even 70-degree weather around Garden City in Kansas. Now here's Declan.
Well, an unsettled situation in the Pacific Northwest is keeping the area under rain and some heavy snow in the mountains. Summer-like temperatures are baking Southern California, San Luis Obispo already a record for today, and the Central Plains are dealing with some comfortable conditions. Let's go ahead and show you what's happening over the western part of the country. You can see that conveyor belt of rain as it continues to streak in from the Pacific, heading into Washington and Oregon. And it looks like we'll pretty much keep that batch of precipitation intact as we head through the next 12 hours or so. There's a chance that as we go through tonight, the rain is going to start working its way farther north towards Seattle. Right now, Seattle, most of the rain to your south. You can see that clearly on radar here. As we go south of Toledo, we pick up some of the significant rain. 43 at Portland, 60 degrees in San Francisco, 86 down at San Luis Obispo, and we've already hit 90 degrees at Los Angeles. And even over the interior and up in some of the higher terrain, it's in the comfortable range. 60s from Denver to Salt Lake City, even as far north as Boise, Idaho, 60 degrees, but some heavy snow cutting into the mountains in Idaho at this hour. Now we have a big upper storm south of the Gulf of Alaska, and on the moisture imagery you can see the spinning motion going on here, and we get the moisture coming over the top of our ridge of high pressure. Looks like this will pretty much stay intact at least for the next 24 hours. We'll have more with the forecast in just a moment. Mike?
Well, it has been raining a lot in the Ohio Valley, and people in the flooded sections of southern Ohio will finally get a few days to dry out and attempt to clean flood damage. The region saw less than 3/4 of an inch of rain yesterday, but any precipitation adds to the frayed nerves of people forced out of their home. John Sherman has the latest from Jackson, Ohio.
At the Shake Shop in downtown Jackson, the #1 topic of conversation isn't the luncheon specials, it's the rain. Flood-weary diners wondering and worrying how much rain they'll get.
Every time it rains down, I think about it. I always look at how deep the creeks are, and because once you have to walk through that deep, you know that you start watching out anyway.
Walk up and down the streets of Jackson, and you can't help but see plenty of evidence of last weekend's flooding. Piles of debris, they're everywhere. And as flood victims continue the cleanup, they can't help but worry when they look outside their windows. Shortly after the rain began Sunday afternoon, the puddles outside Bridget Carpenter's house started to grow. She and her friends are just getting the place cleaned up, and now this.
Hopefully it'll stop. Of course, I kept saying that night too, and it just kept coming, but if it keeps coming, I'm leaving. I'm not waiting until I have to walk through it to get out.
Just a few days ago, Carpenter's home was filled with 4 feet of water. Since then, she's replaced the carpet, furniture, even painted the living room.
I'm going to cringe every time it rains. I mean, there's no doubt. But I'm not leaving my house. I mean, I'll keep living here, whether it floods again or not. It's my home.
Well, let's see what the future brings as far as that low-pressure system and more rain. The first one, a Clipper-type low, is coming on through with some snow by tomorrow morning, moving through northern New England and maybe down to about, say, I-90, the Mass Pike, and the New York State Thruway there northward. Possibly another light accumulation. Low really winds up, but a little bit too late to give most people headaches. Watch out on Cape Cod, though, from Taunton down the Cape. Again, with this low winding up, could toss some heavier snow back in your direction briefly. Kind of like this morning. Could happen again. Harmless weather, Salt Lake City to Denver. Heavy rain possible, San Antonio and Brownsville. And watch out for low pressure coming on through the northwest. Portland gets more rain. Even Seattle, drippy rains. Some of the heavier in the Rio Grande Valley. Some snow in the northern Rockies, Yellowstone country, as tomorrow morning dawns 60-ish in New Orleans and 70 later in the day in Atlanta. We'll look ahead further, and we'll notice that the cool weather skims the northern tier, Minneapolis, Pittsburgh. You'll be kind of chilly, but 60s to near 70. No real warm weather. It'll be in the 80s in Tampa, Orlando, and Miami for the most part. But to the north, windy and colder weather in the northeast. Then low pressure comes in and taps the Gulf of Mexico. Heavy rain, a possibility in Kentucky, Ohio, Louisville, and on into Cincinnati, even Atlanta Friday. And Friday to Saturday, a chance of more snow into the northeast. Speaking of which, skiers' forecast is next.
No client's name? Bib. What's Bib?
The client's name.
Try Bob. Welcome aboard, Bob.
It's Bib. Need to save on paper? Staples has paper, cartridges, toner, over 5,000 office supplies, all at the guaranteed low price. Staples, yeah, we've got that.
You'll get free in-home design service, fast 2 to 4 week delivery, and sleep study and storage packages from $995.
Room Plus. It's just round the corner.
The accuracy you depend on. Action Radar, only on Action News.
Action News, Delaware Valley's leading news program, with Scott Palmer, Dave Roberts, Lisa Thomas-Laurie, and Mark Howard.
Good evening. In the news tonight, anger over welfare reform and new restrictions spark protests in Philadelphia.
And 4 people are killed following a fiery 90-car pileup in England.
But the big story on Action News tonight is Herbert Hack back on the witness stand today in the Center City jogger murder trial. This time the prosecution is asking the questions. John Rollins joins us live from the Criminal Justice Center with the latest. John?
Well, Lisa, the cross-examination just ended a short while ago. I think it's safe to say that Herbert Hack stuck to his major contentions that he is innocent here, but he became somewhat vague when it came to the details. Under relentless cross-examination, Herbert Hack continued to deny he was involved in the November 2nd, 1995 murder of jogger Kimberly Ernest. He continued to claim that detectives slapped and hit him before he signed his disputed confession. But the murder defendant appeared confused and at times contradicted himself today when it came to the details as to how his signature ended up on his statement. First, he indicated he signed blank pages. Then he indicated to prosecutor Judy Rubino he wasn't sure if the pages were blank or had been filled out. He explained he was upset after his interrogation, saying, quote, "I was scared. I didn't have no idea what was going on. I just wanted the whole thing over." Earlier, Hack was on the defensive using a large map. He had to explain to the jury why the day of the Ernest murder he chose to drive by the murder scene. He blamed it on traffic. Rubino also brought out Hack's criminal past, how he and co-defendant Richard Wise had been involved in several fights, how they were arrested for stealing. She also forced him to admit that he had misled police in Bucks County and had perjured himself in a 1988 case. The prosecution's message to the jury was that Hack has lied before and he is lying now regarding his claim of a forced confession.
That Herbert Hack is a liar, and I think that they know that now, and they know now that he even testified under oath at another trial. So I think it's clear.
Yes, he has. He's maybe a con artist, but he's not a murderer, and that's the point that we made in our opening, and that's the point we're making now. Nothing has come out here that's any different than what the jury had already been told. Maybe the tone is different from the prosecutor because she's cross-examining him.
Interesting twist at the end of today's testimony. Just a few minutes ago, the defense made a motion. They want to take the jury. They're asking the judge to take the jury on a bus and take them to the 21st and Pine crime scene. The prosecution shot back that that was the case. They would want to take that same route that Mr. Hack took the day of the murder. It's the prosecution's point that he went out of his way to go past the murder scene, and that is significant. The judge took in all that and said he would rule on the measure tomorrow. I'm John Rollins, live on the Action Cam in Center City.
Thank you, John.
All right, Lisa, out on the West Coast, Los Angeles Police Commission has fired the first shot in its attempt to fire Chief Willie Williams. Williams, who was Philadelphia's former top cop, was brought in 1992 to restore confidence in the Los Angeles Police Department after the Rodney King riots. He was seeking a second term. Well, the Police Commission today voted no way. They cited his accomplishments and his support from the public, but they say he does not have the respect of the Commission or of the officers of the Los Angeles Police Department whom he runs.
We will need a chief who can garner the support and trust of the rank and file. We will need a chief who will make a better use of the available resources and accept the help and insight of others involved in law enforcement. And we will need a chief who will utilize the efforts and commitment of the Board of Police Commissioners rather than challenging the board's authority over him.
Well, late today, Chief Williams had this reaction.
My first comment is that I'm deeply disappointed at the decision that was made by the Board of Police Commissioners this morning. I've always felt and believed that over the last 4.5 years, I provided not just leadership, but effective leadership to the men and women inside this organization and to the men and women of the city of Los Angeles.
And coming up at 5:30, a live update from L.A. and local reaction to Williams's potential firing. Lisa?
Funeral services were held today for a foster child who died last week. That as an investigation continues into how he died. There was mourning and there was anger for the 2-year-old Anthony Williams in North Philadelphia today. The medical examiner has ruled his death a homicide, but no charges have been filed. Little Anthony was living in this home in Germantown with Gregory and Andrea Freeman. They say his death was an accident. David Henry will have more on this tragic story coming up at 5:30, including comments for the first time from the dead boy's birth mother.
The Philadelphia medical examiner has not yet ruled in the death of a second grader who was hanged to death in the basement of her Overbrook Park home. It happened in this Woodcrest Avenue home in Overbrook Park. 8-year-old Tyra Miller was described by neighbors as a delightful youngster who played and rode her bike around the neighborhood. Neighbors reported hearing her scream, "I love you, Mommy." Then her mother went to the basement and found the girl hanging by a jump rope from a pipe in the basement ceiling. So far, no ruling on accident or suicide or homicide. More on this at 6 o'clock from Kristen Z at the scene. A new witness for convicted cop killer Mumia Abu Jamal as he fights his Pennsylvania death sentence in the state Supreme Court. At a news conference in City Hall today, Jamal's lead lawyer, Leonard Weinglass, introduced an admitted convicted prostitute, 31-year-old Pamela Jenkins, who said police, including one officer convicted in the 39th District scandal, tried to get her to lie to help them convict Jamal.
And they was putting a lot of pressure on me to testify that I seen Jamal with a gun, and I didn't get into it, and they kept pressuring me. I was paid $150 to find Cynthia White. And that's basically the story.
Well, Jenkins didn't testify, but she referred to Cynthia White, who did, and later changed her story. Well, if Jamal's bid for a new trial fails in the state Supreme Court, his final appeal will be in the federal court system.
A California newspaper today rekindled suspicions that a surface-to-air missile downed a TWA Flight 800 last July off Long Island. That is among 3 theories that the FBI has grappled with since the crash. A bomb or a mechanical failure are the other 2. None has been dismissed by investigators. But the press enterprise of Riverside now reports that through lab testing, a private investigator uncovered traces of reddish residue on passenger seats. Residue that is consistent with solid missile fuel. Some witnesses reported seeing a streak in the sky that fateful night, like that from a missile in flight. The toll is now 4 dead and 2 fiery pileups involving 90 cars and trucks. At least 60 people were injured during this chain reaction crash near Birmingham, England. Foggy conditions were the likely cause of the accidents, which spread across a quarter-mile section of the highway. 70 firefighters were needed to put out more than a dozen car fires. In North Carolina today, Robert Glass.
We know who went to bed late last night. Who went to bed early.
That's right.
Overnight, yeah. A little late stuff last night, and if you were looking out the window, you said, oh my goodness, what's going on here? And Chopper 6 was up early this morning, did a little flying. This was the scene, a coat of white for the tri-state area, but it quickly disappeared. All right, let's show you the numbers. Today's high, 54 degrees, and our low 31. Present temperature reading is that high of 54. Pretty good wind out of the west-northwest, 15 miles an hour. The winds will diminish as the sun sets. Tonight, mostly clear skies. It'll be on the chilly side, 36 degrees. Tomorrow, Tuesday, could have a little spritz in the morning. We're looking for a partly sunny and windy afternoon. A high of 54 degrees, so probably match what we had today. The winds will be 15 to 30 miles per hour come tomorrow also. Then Wednesday, 46 degrees, and then on Thursday, 44 degrees with a mixture of sunshine and clouds. Well, if you did look out the window last night, you thought we might be shoveling our cars out early this morning. But once again, the Delaware Valley, we escaped a big snow. Tonight, Thank You Facts file checks out the snow gauge. For all the snow flying last night, the official reading at the airport was just 0.6 of an inch. That brings the total for March to 1.1 inches. And for the entire winter, we've seen a mere 7 inches, just about 7 inches of snow. Compare that to Philadelphia's average snowfall of 21 inches for the year, not to mention record snowfall that we all remember from last year. However, AccuWeather says there's no sign yet of any extended spring-like weather, so stay tuned on this one. The month of March can be a very, very tricky and difficult month to forecast.
Unpredictable.
Yes.
Like,
deal with it.
like some people.
Okay.
In a minute.
Okay.
In a minute, more news. Take a look right now at a beautiful sunset, which is fast approaching. We're what, Dave? About 10 minutes away from sunset?
6:03.
6:03. We are 11 minutes away from the sunset. It's beautiful. We'll be right back.